Hello, friends. Welcome to the Logistics of Logistics podcast. My name is Joe Lynch. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's topic is shelf-ready solutions, Jarrett Logistics, expertise with Mike Jarrett. How's it going, Mike?
Doing great, Joe. Hey, thanks for having me today.
So, Mike, please introduce yourself and your company, where you're calling from today.
I'm the president and CEO of Jarrett Logistics, and we're headquartered in Orrville, Ohio, which is a city that is about an hour south of Cleveland, Ohio. So we're about in the Northeast Ohio market. And we've been in business now 25 years, Joe. This is our 25th anniversary.
So what do you guys specialize in?
So we're a 3PL. We provide supply chain management solutions to a broad base of customers. We're in the LTL, truckload, and expedite and parcel side of the business with our brokerage. And we also provide warehousing and transportation and fleet services to our customers. And then also I'll add in there, we have an international freight forwarding division.
Wow, you guys do it all. So who's the typical customer for you guys?
Our most common customers are those that have a large transportation spend, both in LTL, truckload, expedite, and parcel, and international, and have a very complex supply chain, meaning they have a large number of DCs and a large number of vendors and customers they're shipping from and to. That's the most typical customer we have.
Yep, and are typically moving domestically?
Both domestic and international. Most of our customers have a combination of both. They're doing a lot of domestic shipping, and they're also then bringing containers in from various ports across the world that we manage as well.
Yep. When I was just talking to some friends, and I know you have some background in automotive too, and I said, if you go back to the beginning of my career, I don't even want to say when that was, but a long time ago, if you were in the automotive business, which is where I'm in automotive territory, and so are you needed trucking companies to help you because all of the suppliers were throughout the Midwest. And so you say, we need really good trucking companies and really good brokerages to help us bring that freight inbound and move all the supply chain goods to those suppliers. And now, same supply chain, except stuff is coming from Mexico, stuff is coming from China, stuff's coming from Europe. The idea that you would just need a trucking company now just sounds like, yeah, that's a good start. But now talk about the technology and the freight forwarding and being able to pick up in some small town in China that no one knows how to pronounce. So the world has changed drastically. And that's not just the automotive supply chain. I know you do a lot to the retailers. We know when you go to the retailers that a lot of that stuff did not come from Ohio and Michigan like it might have a generation ago.
You hit the nail on the head there, John. Both of us have a background in automotive, and that's where I cut my teeth with Roadway and Caliber Logistics and eventually FedEx Supply Chain. And the supply chains for the automotive side had supplier pickup times, just-in-time deliveries, sequence with various parts to the automotive manufacturing plant. The supply chain has changed so much, particularly when it comes to CPG and retail and strategic decision-making involving where your vendors are located, having strict requirements on time in full, as well as required delivery dates. Very, very different world we're in with supply chain, which is a good thing. We, as supply chain managers, we like to have a challenge and we like to solve a lot of problems for our customers.
And we always have a new one. Mike, I know you guys have the Jarrett Supply Chain Summit coming up, and I want to talk about that real quick. What is the Jarrett Supply Chain Summit, and who's going to be there? Where is it at? When is it?
So it's August 8th, Joe, is the Jarrett Supply Chain Summit. It's our second annual event. It's going to be bigger and better this year. We're really excited about it. We've got some outstanding transportation experts that are going to be there. Satish Jindal will be one of our speakers. He's a well-known subject matter expert in all areas of supply chain. We've got a number of executives that will be providing their expertise on panels throughout the summit. And then at the end, we have a keynote address from Dan Jansen, the gold medal winner from the Winter Olympics. He's got a great inspirational story that applies to business. So we're excited about it. It's going to be August 8th, It starts at 8:30 a.m. and it runs till 4 o'clock. And then we have a really neat thing after the Supply Chain Summit. We have a charity event called Hearts for Heartland. And the celebrity guest for that event will be Archie Griffin, the two-time Heisman Trophy winner from Ohio State. And then we'll cap off the evening with a private concert from Phil Vassar, a Grammy-nominated country music artist. So we've got a great day in store for August 8th.
August 8th. And where is that at?
It's in Orrville, Ohio at the Jarrett headquarters.
Very nice. I will say some people might be listening in California and go, that's an awful long way. But for those of us in the Midwest and the Northeast, that is not far.
Yeah.
I'm 3 hours from Cleveland.
That's right. Yeah, it's not far at all. And it's well worth the time to come. And for those out there interested in coming, go to our website, gojarrett.com, and you can click on register for the Jarrett Supply Chain Summit, and you can register right there.
Yep. I will put a link to your LinkedIn profile, a link to your website, and any other links you and your marketing team give me. I'll put those in the show notes, including one to the Jarrett Supply Chain Summit so people can get there. Mike, tell us a little bit about you. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? Some career highlights before you started Jarrett. And then why did you start Jarrett?
Yeah, Joe, I started Jarrett in 1999, but before that, I spent quite a few years at Roadway, Caliber Logistics, and FedEx Supply Chain. I grew up in Ohio, went to school in Ohio, went to a small college in Ohio called Mount Union, and then went to grad school at the University of Akron. So I'm Ohio. I've lived in Ohio for many years and a big Buckeye fan. But I started working after graduating from college at Roadway, and then after a number of years at Caliber Logistics, which eventually was bought by FedEx. So it became FedEx Supply Chain in Hudson, Ohio. Decided to launch Jarrett Logistics then in 1999.
Very nice. Now, why did you start it and how did you start it? What was the main industry that you were going after?
Yeah, it actually is more for a personal reason. When FedEx bought Caliber Logistics in the mid 90s, I was fairly certain I'd be asked to relocate to FedEx's headquarters in Memphis. So I got ahead of the process, and my wife and I decided to go ahead and launch Jarrett prior to being asked to relocate. The main reason was because we wanted to raise our family here in Northeast Ohio. And then after that, of course, the second reason is I had an entrepreneurial bug since I was a kid. And I love logistics. I love what supply chain's all about. And so starting Jarrett made a lot of sense at that point. And we started the company the old-fashioned way. We bootstrapped it, maxed out our credit cards, and got a line of credit on our house. And that taught us a lot about what really is important, what really matters in a company structure and a culture. And for us, we're people-centric and tech-enabled. And that's important to us. We focus on our people. Our people is what make us a great company and separates us from the competition.
Very nice. Very nice. So today's topic, I want to talk about shelf-ready food. So the title today is Shelf-Ready Solutions. What is shelf-ready for those who are not into that every single day?
Joe, we have a number of customers that are manufacturers of CPG. So they're shipping their goods, LTL, truckload, expedite, and international, inbound to DCs of the retailer. And that is a very complex supply chain. As most of those out there listening that work with retailers like Publix, Walmart, Lowe's, Home Depot, Chewy.com, if we're in the pet business, we have customers in the pet business as well. You have a lot of challenges there. Simply, it's around OTIF, O time in full, and meeting required delivery dates. And so those challenges require a supply chain management company like us to manage that process from an execution standpoint. But then also, it's really important to have the data analytics to support hitting the RDD so that you don't get hit with fun.
Yep. So when we talk about shelf ready, that is not typically cold chain. That is going to be Kraft macaroni and cheese. It might be peanut butter. It might be a tool that goes on the shelf at a Home Depot. But the stuff that is ready to be put on the shelf when it gets there. And that stuff is the bread and butter of these big retail locations, the big box stores, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, we're in this case we're referring to dry goods, yeah, peanut butter, cereal, coffee, a number of products that we handle for our customers that are in the dry goods space. And it's all about getting the deliveries to the retailers' DCs on time and in full.
So I know you guys move freight from producers to DCs. So the Home Depots and the Lowe's and all those other grocery chains you mentioned, they all have DCs. You're delivering for your customers, the CPGs, which could be food, could be tools, could be any number of things. You're delivering to those DCs, but you're also moving stuff from your DCs to retail locations. Am I correct?
That's correct. We have a warehousing division where we are providing cross-docking, case picking, order fulfillment for the CPG companies. And that's a different animal as well. It really is the value proposition for us and our customers in that space is our transportation and logistics divisions working directly with our own warehouses. So when we're able to do that, we're able to increase the accuracy, hitting the required delivery date on a much higher frequency. And one other thing we do is in our own warehouses, we are taking pictures of all the freight that moves outbound to our CPG customers so that if there's ever any question about whether, say, a pallet is an approved pallet or whether a shrink wrap is removed from the pallet, there's huge fines, upwards of $1,500 a ship if it's on the wrong pallet.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah. And sometimes our transportation partners will take product and put it onto a new pallet for whatever reason. So it's maybe fits in the truck better or stackable. That can create a $1,500 fine back to our customer, the manufacturer. So we take pictures of the product to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yep. And you guys also do some e-commerce stuff, right?
We do case pick, order fulfillment for a lot of e-commerce companies. That, again, our manufacturers are having us do the case pick, order fulfillment, and shipping e-commerce direct to the consumer. So that would be the B2C side of our business. It's a huge growth area for us and in our warehousing space.
Yeah, and it's when you think of like retail logistics, it's traditionally been you're taking it from a DC to a retailer or you're taking it to the DC. Then when you talk about this B2C, you're talking about small parcel and a ton of it, and it has to move fast. That same day, next day that everybody loves, it comes at a price of moving really fast if you are in the e-commerce.
Amazon has changed the rules in that space. That's a high bar with same day, next day, 2-day delivery. I think all the e-commerce sites are expecting that now. And as a third-party warehouser doing case pick and order fulfillment, B2C, we need to get that product through the warehouse as quickly as possible and get it shipped with that parcel carrier immediately in order to hit that 1 to 2 day time frame.
Yeah, I wear Hoka shoes, and I bought some the other day at a retail location, and they said, "Oh, we'll ship it to your house," and they said it'll be there in a week, and I was like, "In a week?" And I was like, "I'm like 25 minutes from the store," and then they delivered it. It was the wrong color, and I was like, "Oh," so I had to drive back to that store, and then they said, "Oh, we'll send it. It'll be another week." I felt. I didn't lose my temper, but I felt irrationally angry because I just feel like we've gotten so used to I order it online and it's at my house a day or two later. So any talk of a week feels, are you crazy? But it's not. It's and by the way, the Hoka supply chain, I know they're a popular shoe, so everybody wants them. It's hard to carry the inventory of all the shoe sizes and all the colors and all the models. So sometimes it's in a DC. And by the way, I looked at the label. This was shipped from Ohio to Michigan to me.
Oh my, that's great. What you just described there is the new customer expectation. 4 or
Yes.
5 days no longer cuts it. It's 1 to 2 day service that customers expect. And so that's how the supply chain has changed so much really over the last 5 to 10 years.
Yep. And it's funny, you're working with those CPGs who, again, retail logistics is very difficult already. And I feel, and then so if you're a CPG, you're like, we got more and more technology to support, companies like yours have the technology to support delivering to these retail locations. And then you throw in this, oh yeah, also can you support Amazon and our website and maybe some other online sellers? It's a lot.
Yes, absolutely.
So I want to talk about some of the problems with delivering to these big box locations. And the first thing I want to ask you about is, first off, you said OTIF earlier. For those who are not soaking in OTIF all day, every day, what is OTIF?
It's on time in full, and retailers instituted that OTIF policy quite a few years ago. And it's a standard that's hard to meet because there's so many moving parts in a retail supply chain. And that's what we're here for. That's what we do, and we do it really well. And we get why the retailers have that OTIF policy, because if the product's not on time and in full, it's not on their shelf, they can't sell it. But they put a lot of pressure back on the manufacturers to meet these high standards. And that's where us as a supply chain management and logistics company can manage that process for the customer.
Yep. And so when they say on time and in full, so if they say, I want 100 pairs of these shoes in these, and you say, oh, as it turns out, we just had 90 and we delivered them. Is that okay? The answer is no, and you're being fined. And how do they come up with the fines? How do they calculate that?
The fines can be exorbitant. They range anywhere from a few $100s a shipment up to $1,500 a shipment. Simply, you can be fined $1,500 for, say, having a no-show from the carrier or not delivering on time, which is what was referred to as the RDD date, or required delivery date. I think it starts with execution, and execution with working with us at Jarrett Logistics is our manufacturers who are shipping inbound to retail distribution centers. The first thing is tendering the shipment to us, and that's usually done through API or EDI using technology. And what we do is we proactively look at the tender date relative to the required delivery date. So we're going back to our customers and saying, if they don't have enough transit time built into the tender date to make it on time by the RDD, we're going to go back to our customer and let them know they need to adjust the tender date. That saves our customers significant dollars. If you think about a late shipment with some retailers costing upwards of $1,500 per shipment, it's a significant savings by being proactive and adjusting the tender date. And we can do that through our TMS, or transportation management software. And that is a huge savings. That's the first thing, is proactively managing the tender date relative to the RDD. The second thing is picking the right carrier. Certain retailers work with carriers better than others. For example, some carriers will have drop trailers at the retailer's DC. It's better to work with carriers that have drop trailers at the DCs, because those drop trailers are being switched out on a daily basis. So you're not going to get stuck and not meet the RDD with a carrier that's doing live unloading versus a carrier that's doing drop trailers. So that's another part of the process that we work with our customers on.
So are you seeing more drop trailers since the ELD mandate?
Yeah, drop trailers is a very popular program because the carrier doesn't have to wait until their trailer gets full to deliver to the DC. They're doing the switch out on a daily basis, sometimes multiple times a day. And that makes a much more efficient way to get the product to the DC on time. Most importantly, it has to be there by the required delivery date. Otherwise, that fine takes place.
Yeah. And I also, from what I understand, I've talked to a carrier not so long ago about this, and they said they had done some of the math, and they said it saves maybe 2.5 hours on the according to their math, if you can do the drop off the trailer and then pick it up when it's full. That whole process is a half hour rather than close to 3 hours. But it does require you to have extra trailers that you can drop off at that retail location, or I'm sorry, probably at your CPG prior to, So you need extra trailers for that flexibility.
Yeah, you do have to have more trailers in fleet, but yeah, what a huge savings it is to the carrier and also to the manufacturer because you avoid or mitigate those fines. Another thing that really helps with drop trailers, Joe, is when you're a manufacturer and we tender the shipment to our carriers and it's en route, the carrier is responsible with our programs to set the appointment with the DC no later than 24 hours after they've made the pickup. Now, that is really important because when the carrier sets the appointment, if they wait more than 24 hours, they might miss a window that is before the RDD. That's a problem because if they hold on to the shipment and then they wait a day or two to schedule the appointment, they may schedule an appointment that is after the required delivery date. And guess what? The manufacturer gets hit with a fine, even though the DC did not have a slot available prior to the RDD. That's where precision and timing is so important.
Yeah, this is before we hit record, we were talking about this. This is why if you're a CPG, if you're a producer, manufacturer, whatever, you don't want a newbie in this. You want somebody who says, I do this every day for years because it is exacting and difficult. And it's very unforgiving. It's not like you give an apology. Hey, sorry, we're a little late. No, they get you with a giant fine. And I think also, I know you own trucks, so you know this better than I do. But from what I understand, carriers and drivers prefer dropping off trailers and picking, so they don't have to do that live unload and the live load.
Yeah, you're waiting in line a lot if you're doing live unloading, and the drop trailer program helps alleviate that. I would also say, Joe, one of the things that we do that is really important is the data analytics that supports the execution of those shipments. In other words, we measure when a carrier does not make an appointment within 24 hours after picking up the shipment. And so if they don't make that appointment within 24 hours, we capture that in our data analytics. And that allows us to go back to the retailer to explain that the issue is not a manufacturing issue, it's a carrier issue. And so you have to have the data analytics to support when there is a potential fine from the retailer back to the manufacturer. And that's something we do with dashboard reports using our business intelligence software. So it's really a two-step process. It's execution, proactively executing the tendering of the shipment, getting the shipment into the carrier network, getting the appointment set, and delivering. But then it's also having a data analytics to support what actually happened in that shipment to mitigate those fines that come from the retailers. That is the
Yeah.
key. And it's a very intensive process from beginning to end, but it's well worth it because our customers are saving a lot of money because we're able to either reduce the fines or mitigate them completely.
Yep. And when you think about on time and in full, you get fined if you deliver late or not in full. And that's obviously no one wants to go back. If you're the 3PL and say, oh, this was a fine that we caused, that's obviously horrible. But also one of the things that, to the point of the retailer, I would think the reason those fines are in there is, first off, they don't want to receive. They said, give me 100 pallets of this. They don't want to receive 90 of them. And then next week get the rest because it's really hard for them to manage. But also, if you're a retailer, you don't make money if the stuff's not on the shelf to sell. And also, if you're the CPG that finally got that shelf space at that big box retailer, you don't want to be with the empty shelf and all of a sudden your customers are using your competition and potentially they're gone for good. I told you how I used to drink Diet Pepsi. I drink Diet Coke now. It's because some roach coach that used to deliver to our location or not deliver. There was a roach coach and they didn't sell Diet Pepsi for a long time. So I started drinking Diet Coke and I switched. That happens. So these retailers, they're demanding, but there's good reason they're demanding because nobody makes money if it's not on the shelf.
That's right.
And most retail, we're seeing a lot of retailers go out of business right now. Retail is a really difficult business. And they are carrying inventory and they're now competing against the Amazons of the world. And even Walmart's got their Walmart.com. If they aren't doing a good job with the inventory on the shelves, hey, you lose. Everybody loses in that equation.
And I can't stress enough to what technology, how it has changed the landscape so significantly to allow us to manage these supply chains much more efficiently. And again, save money for our customers when they're shipping inbound to the retailer.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I know the technology is really helpful, but I got to believe that having a culture that is proactive, that is on top of it, because everything you described to me today is very detail oriented. I want tech, but I also need people to be looking at that and saying, none of this, making those phone calls doesn't automatically happen. Saying, hey, that RD, required delivery date, doesn't have enough time built in. Doing that, our technologies won't always flag that. People do.
Absolutely. And that's a great point, Joe. We fully embrace the technology that is now available in supply chain space. But I think sometimes 3PLs, supply chain management companies like us, our competitors sometimes rely too much on what technology and AI and machine learning can do, and not enough how important it is to have the human interaction. And I think that's key. We balance that. We have a control tower. We call it our routing center, where all shipment information comes into. Our individuals within the control tower are responding to emails in 10 minutes or less. Every time you call into our routing center during business hours, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you talk to a live person. That's pretty incredible, Joe. Not many companies in our industry can commit to that. Not only do you talk to a live person when you call in, that person will answer the phone in 3 rings or less. That's quick, that's fast, and we pride ourselves on that. That's a different level of customer service. That's world-class customer service.
Yep. You need it because if something's not getting delivered, if something's gone wrong, and by the way, the nature of logistics, things go wrong. There are delays, there are traffic jams, there are things that have to be dealt with, and you do need a team. I know I talk to a lot of technology people on my podcast, and we need them, but they have a thought process, which is how do we eliminate this human interaction? And there's some places where we absolutely positively can and should eliminate the human interaction. But when somebody's got a problem, they don't want to say, here, oh, yeah, just go ahead and log in and solve it yourself.
I think you mentioned culture earlier. I think it comes back to how you're hardwired culture. One of the things that differentiates us is we're family owned. We've been family owned from day one, 25 years ago. We still are family owned. Our operating scale and our technology capabilities have expanded enormously, but what hasn't changed is we're still family owned. And what that means is that you're important to us. As a customer, you are important because when you're family owned, you have a different level of focus on how important customers are. Secondly, we want to make sure that our customers are innovative. We're on the cutting edge of solutions for them with technology and other areas to keep them innovative. And lastly, we want to make sure that our customers understand that they are informed at all times. Visibility in the supply chain is so important. And that's the Jarrett promise. We want customers to be important, feel important. We want customers to be innovative. We want them to be informed.
Yeah. A buddy of mine is a consultant, very smart guy. He works with a lot of companies. And he often says to me when we're talking about business, because when you have a company, sometimes they get bureaucratic, sometimes just rules develop. And he goes, never happens that way when the founder's still there. He goes, it's a generation or two later when the founder's voice isn't there anymore. He says, because if the founder was there, he'd say, wait, why are we going to this meeting? Why are we doing this? Why is there a new process that adds no value? And he said, the founder's voice, when it's gone, you really have to go back and find a new voice that has to have the clarity of keeping it focused on adding value for the customers. And I thought about that because I've worked a lot in automotive in the past. Those are massive companies. And sometimes you go, is this just senseless bureaucracy we're dealing with? The automotive companies are very lean now, but they're still huge. So little pockets of bureaucracy develop. And you go, how is this making a better car? How does this make it cheaper? How does it make it any better?
No, you're exactly right. I think every company, the founder has a unique footprint that establishes the culture of that company. So I totally agree with you. And for us, as the founder and CEO of the company, for me, the footprint that is built into our culture is it's a people first culture. That's our footprint. And that comes directly from me starting this company 25 years ago.
Yep. I want to talk a little bit about, so we talked a little bit about technology earlier. While we were prepping, we had a conversation about two things, and I guess they're separate but connected. So the first is the freight fraud, and then I want to talk about the cybersecurity. So first, talk about the freight fraud. Have you guys been? I know it has visited virtually everybody, and I think we're starting to fight back on the freight fraud. So please elaborate.
Yeah, it's freight fraud is a big issue in the industry right now. It's top of mind for supply chain professionals. And like you said, I think most everyone in the industry has been impacted by it. Basically, what we're seeing high frequency of theft, primarily of high value goods in the truckload space. So I think what's happening is these crooks are getting smarter. They're using technology to try to steal loads, and they're identifying where the loads are that have the highest value. And so they're going after those loads at all-time highs. We haven't seen fraud. I've been in this industry for nearly 30 years. I haven't seen it at this level in all my years in supply chain. So that's the fraud side of it, the theft. And then you have cybersecurity. We hear about the CrowdStrike issue that impacted millions of people across the country. We see that carriers get their systems hacked. And so I think cybersecurity is a big issue right now. And as someone that's involved in this industry, we want to protect our data at the highest levels.
Yep. I think when we talk about the freight fraud, I know there's some solutions out there and we can fight back against that. I think when also companies like yours are working with small carriers who almost by definition can't always invest in the latest and greatest cybersecurity protection, but you're also working with Fortune 500 companies. And you're in the middle. You're the barrier that has to protect those Fortune 500 companies from potential breaches that are in your large network of carriers. And
there's a lot of tools out there, and we're using those tools right now in order to protect theft. And what's happening is a lot of these folks are stealing carrier identities and they're posing as the carrier when really they're not. And sometimes it comes down to the misspelling of an email address by one letter. And if you don't pick up on that, you're now dispatching a load to a fraudulent party. And so we're using tools right now that are allowing us to sift through that information. It does come down to having relationships as well with your carriers. When you have an ongoing relationship with a carrier and you're dealing with the same people over and over again to handle those loads for you, you have a high confidence level that there's not a fraudulent party that got themselves in between you and the carrier.
it's funny you should say that, Mike. I had talked to Ann Renke from TIA, and I said, one thing you never get defrauded by the guy you've been working with for a decade, the guy you talk to on the phone. I said, and I'm not against the technology. We all know we need this technology, but if the technology takes the relationship out of it, that sometimes is where the challenge comes. And it sounds old fashioned, and maybe it is, but picking up the phone and talking to that carrier you've never worked with and saying, "Hey, I just received your email. Did you send it?"
No, you're speaking my language there, Joe. I think it is maybe construed as old fashioned, but it's good business sense. And getting to know the person that you're dealing with, to understand them better, it could make all the difference between getting a load stolen that has values of $200,000 or more to not getting that load stolen and getting it delivered on time and keeping the customer happy.
Right. And so when we're talking about freight fraud, that's isolated. And then when we talk about cybersecurity, we did see some carriers get hacked over the last year. And again, this is almost we're at a place where there's no shame, because we saw Microsoft and the airlines were all impacted by the CrowdStrike. That wasn't a hack, but it was a vulnerability that it exposed. But a few weeks before that, we had AT&T, a top technology company. No one looks at these guys as slackers. If they can be hacked, a lot of other players can be hacked. And I believe that we're going to see the larger companies, the Fortune 500, the Fortune 2000, are going to start saying, here's what we expect from our partners like Jarrett. And I think, I'm not positive of this, I think they are going to move to companies that can make those investments. And wait, I'm not against mom and pop brokers or 3PLs, but the challenge I think some of them are going to have is investing in the technologies that can become that protection for the shippers.
Yeah, that bar has been raised for sure on cybersecurity. We recently signed a contract with the Fortune 500 size company, well-known company in the marketplace, and they specifically put language in our contract, extensive language around cybersecurity and what we do as a 3PL to ensure that our system will not get hacked. And that's important. That's a top of mind issue with a lot of companies out there. So that bar definitely has been raised.
And the challenge you have, and I know you know it, is they can be asked of you. Those Fortune 500 companies say, Mike, here's what we expect from you. Unfortunately, you're working with smaller carriers, and you have to somehow become that barrier. Say, we're the last wall of defense. We will not let it get past us, but we're going to experience it.
Yeah. And again, I think it's important on the 3PLs who are working with large Fortune 500 size companies to use the tools that are available out there, become a member of TIA, for example. They have a lot of tools that are available to supply chain management companies to prevent fraud and theft from happening. I strongly recommend 3PLs to join TIA because they have a lot of tools there. They will also be subject matter experts to steer you in the direction of tools that are outside of TIA that we also have embarked on. And those tools have been very helpful to prevent fraud as well. We've been able to catch a number of situations that using these tools that we may not have caught previously.
Yep. I mentioned to you before we hit the record button that NMFTA, which is the standard setting organization for the LTL carriers, they're having a conference down your way in Cleveland in October. And it's all about cybersecurity because, again, it's top of mind for a lot of people. Anyway, let me try and summarize all of what we talked about. Then I want to get your final thoughts on the topic. So I'm talking to my friend Mike Jarrett, and the topic is shelf-ready solutions, Jarrett Logistics expertise. So you guys are largely moving a lot of shelf-ready food from the producers, from the manufacturers to their distribution centers or to the retailer distribution centers. You're also moving a lot of freight from your DCs to retail locations. You're doing a fair amount of e-commerce, and you're working a lot of the CPGs and the retailers. And we talked a little bit about these problems, and these problems are not going away. On time and in full is a very high bar, but it has to be met for the efficiency of these retailers. And if you don't meet it, you take the risk of fines or even potentially losing the business if you can't continually deliver at that high level. That's why companies come to companies like yours. And we talked a lot about this need for business intelligence, data analytics that can support. Did we get the on time and in full, or was the on time and full not doable because of the tender date being unrealistic? You have to be proactively on top of that on time and in full every day, or you miss. It takes technology, but it also takes a team that is constantly on top of it. We also talked about just how do we prevent those chargebacks. Again, it's a proactive team along with the data analytics and the documentation, let's face it, documentation that proves we didn't miss. And then we talked about the fraud and the cybersecurity, bigger and bigger problems this year. Put a big old bow on this one, Mike.
Well, you covered a lot of ground with me today, Joe, and I sure appreciate it. That you pretty much covered everything that, like, hopefully the listeners out there will learn a little bit from this discussion on really how to manage the manufacturer to the retailer and all of the moving parts that are involved in that process. At the end of the day, we want our customers to be happy and we want their customer to be happy. And when it's on time and in full, meets the required delivery date, everybody's happy. And even the retailer, like your example with Diet Coke, it's there on the shelf, ready for you to buy, then you're happy as well. That's what we do as a 3PL in this space.
So at the end of these podcasts, I always say, what conferences will I see you at? But I know we already talked. We will see you this is going to publish on Monday. I'm not exactly sure the date, but I think it's the 5th. And so next week, August 8th, you guys have the Jarrett Supply Chain Summit, which is in Orrville. And you said Orrville's right outside Cleveland?
It's about an hour south of Cleveland. Yeah. So it's an easy trip. Yeah. It starts at 8:30 on August 8th. That's Thursday and goes till 4 p.m. That's the Jarrett Supply Chain Summit. I think it's going to be a great event. And we also then have our Hearts for Heartland charity event right after that in the evening.
What is Hearts for Heartland?
So Hearts for Heartland is a charity event for Heartland education community. It's a nonprofit here in Orrville that supports the Orrville schools. We're a big supporter of Heartland education. And so we're doing this charity event in order to raise funds for Heart.
Yep. And you said you're going to have that, what's his name? Satish? What's his name?
Yep. Satish Chandel will be one of the headline speakers at the Jarrett Supply Chain Summit. He's well known in supply chain. But most of the time, if you're reading a Wall Street Journal article on supply chain, Satish is the person that's quoted. He's a subject matter expert. And so we're looking forward to having him here, along with many other transportation executives. We have a number of panels, and the format is very similar to a CSCMP event. In fact, our moderator is Tom Clark, who is the chair of the Cleveland CSCMP Roundtable. He does an outstanding job as the moderator of our event.
Excellent. And I know I asked before we hit record, you guys will also be at CSCMP. Where is that at?
It's in Nashville this fall.
And then you're at SMC?
SMC3, that's in Atlanta in January. We have a team of people that go to both of those events on an annual basis.
Yep. I'll make sure I put a link to your LinkedIn profile, a link to your website, a link to that charity, and also to your event. So anybody who's listening. And again, what I love about this is so many of the events, I'm going to an event in Vegas coming up here in September. It's for Trimble. And I'm looking forward to it. But I go to a lot of events in Vegas. It is so much easier for us in the Midwest to go to Midwestern locations. Vegas is great, but getting in your car and being able to say, yeah, I'm 3 hours from Cleveland. It's a lot easier than getting on a plane and going a few time zones away.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And if I might add this, I know I talked to you last year. I know a lot of people would say the freight hub is Chicago. And I think people would say Chattanooga, and there's some others, but where supply chain was more or less born, I think it is Michigan and Ohio. And it started with automotive, but if you go to Ohio, and I've been there a lot for business, there is so much there. If you're going from the East Coast to the West Coast, you go through Ohio. If you're going from the North to the South, you go through Ohio.
No, exactly.
And don't speed. Don't speed. I've learned that.
No, Ohio's motto is the heart of it all. And I think we feel like from a supply chain standpoint, we're in the heart of supply chain here in Ohio.
Yep. Excellent. Excellent. Mike, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe. I really appreciate your time today.
Yep. And thank all of you for listening to my podcast. Your support is very much appreciated. Until next time, onward and upward. You have been listening to the Logistics of Logistics podcast, where we engage with leaders in the logistics and supply chain community. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave us a nice review on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you listen. Also, please check out our videos on YouTube and connect with us on LinkedIn. We're very big on LinkedIn. And you can also reach us on the logisticsoflogistics.com, our website.